everyone, welcome to my tiny little studio on this tiny little Greek island. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about warm and cool colors. What are they and why do I need to know them and how on earth do I use them effectively in my paintings? But before we get started, please click the subscribe button below and click on that little notification bell so that you know when I have a new video up on this YouTube channel. And also a big thank you to all of you out there who have subscribed. I'm thanking you very, very much, helping my channel grow. If you like what I'm doing here, please support me and keep the channel growing stronger and stronger. And then the last one is anybody interested in signing up for the membership area on this YouTube channel. It's just $2.99 per month where you get lots of things from me. Go check that out where it says join. My name is Vita Evenson and I paint. Teach my students to begin painting with a primary limited palette. That's just a yellow, a red, and a blue, and some white, and you're pretty much good to go. It is the first level of understanding how color works. So which colors would be your warm colors and which ones would be your blue colors? Oh, no, oops. I just gave it away, didn't I? The warm colors on a primary limited palette are your yellows and reds. And your cool colors are mixed with the blues. But does that work when you're working on a painting? Yeah, if you're mixing your primary limited palette and creating a painting using just those three colors plus white, then you can effectively use it that way. So if you're just starting out, if you're a beginner, you just want to learn how this whole color thing works, go with the primary limited palette. Pick a red, pick a yellow, pick a blue, start mixing colors. But when you begin to expand out and add more colors to your palette, or you want a deeper and more sensitized painting because you're kind of getting there and you know what's going on a little bit with your color mixing, then I want you to add a warm and cool of each of your primary. So you have a warm yellow and a cool yellow, a warm red and a cool red, and a warm blue and a cool blue. But aren't all blues cool anyways? How can you have a warm blue? I'm going to answer that question later on in the video, so stay tuned and watch all the way through. Besides, yes, it helps my channel. So, putting in a little thing there. What do you call them? What do we call them up there? I'm plugging myself. I don't know. I don't know what it's called, so whatever. But yeah, putting it in there. Let's go to the palette and my logic behind why I use the blues the way that I do. So let's get started with that and then we'll be back for more. So here I have my typical palette with my primaries, a warm and cool of each primary, plus a couple of earth tones, and my white. Usually in a painting, I'll choose either the warmer white, which is the flake white, or the titanium white, which is a cool white. I put them both out here so that you can hopefully see the difference between the two. It's very subtle, but this white is a beautiful white. It is, in fact, warmer and creates a different effect when you mix it with these other colors. I'll get to that in another video. The question is, how do you really decipher which blue is warm and which blue is cool? If you're thinking of just yellow and just red and just blue as primary colors, the yellow and the red would be, in fact, warm colors, and the blue would be considered your cool color. But when you're using a split primary palette, then you have a warm and cool of each. How do you decipher which one of these is warm and which one is cool? And that's what I want to talk about today. Using your blues, a lot of people decide that ultramarine blue is warm, whereas this blue, the cerulean blue, would be, in fact, a cool color. I'm not so sure about that, and here is my reasoning behind it. Let's quickly mix a color wheel. So when we are looking at the color spectrum, this is what we're seeing. The red has the lowest wavelengths, and so we perceive this color as red. And as we move up the color spectrum or over, the wavelengths get shorter and shorter until we reach the purple color. And so as we are moving in this direction, it goes to show that ultramarine blue is, in fact, because it is moving more towards the indigo color or purple, more cool than let's say this color here, cerulean blue, which has more green in it. So to me, that is a very, very simple understanding of how these colors work. Just because we bend this color spectrum up to touch, creating the color wheel, does not mean that this is how we see color. It is just a useful tool to help us understand color. But just because the ultramarine blue is moving more towards the red does not make the ultramarine blue warm. So again, in our understanding of color, this is what works for me. And I think it is a very valid and backed up by science understanding of color. However, for some artists out there, and for many of them, in fact, ultramarine blue, for them, moves into being a warmer color. And a color like cerulean blue or phthalo blue, because it moves more towards the green, they consider it being a cooler color. I guess I just don't see the logic in that, but I accept it because essentially, when you become more advanced in your painting and understanding of how color works, you're able to pull it off. So my understanding of color, whether it is warm or cool in the blues, depends on where it sits on this color spectrum of how we see color, not on the color wheel. And where we see color, cerulean blue is moving towards green. This is where the green pile would be. And ultramarine blue is moving towards the violet, purples, indigo. And so for me, it is a cooler color. Now let's also look at the earth tones. Here I have burnt sienna and I have raw umber. If you look at burnt sienna is basically a dark orange. So let's add a little bit of white to it. I'll use titanium white. You can see how it kind of comes to a ceramic color. Let's add a little bit of titanium white to the raw umber and see what happens there. So do you see what's happening? How different these two colors play and work together. This one, raw umber, is moving more towards the green, and burnt sienna is moving towards the orange. It would be in the orange level. So burnt sienna is a warm color and raw umber is a cool color. When you're painting and you're still a beginner, an intermediate painter, a really good way to start this whole warm and cool color thing is by using warm colors in your foreground, warm colors where the light is hitting your subject, and then your cool colors in the shadow areas, and also when fading into the background of your painting. And this is how I started out. And I'm going to show you two paintings that I have done. The small one was from years ago when I first did this scene. And this is the result of when I got better at painting. And I want to show you how I've used the same idea in both painting. So let's take a look at this first little painting. You can see in the foreground and on the fishing boat area and the rocks and the sea, everything is kind of moving into the warmer colors, and it just brings the feeling forward. It's like you're standing there. And as we're going into the background, you can see, especially in those little rocks, right, in the more background rocks, that they're moving into a cooler colors and more and desaturated. So two things are happening when you're moving into the background with atmospheric perspective. The farther back you go, your colors will desaturate, meaning that they're not going to have high contrast. They're going to get closer on the value range and closer to the mid-tone. So they're not going to be too dark, and there's not going to be too light. So it's just going to be somewhere there. So if you have a rock that's in the sunlight in the foreground, you're going to have a strong shadow. The cast shadow is going to be strong, and it's just going to create more contrast. And as you're moving back, that gets a little bit more blurry and more gentle. So this is one of the ways that you can, in fact, create atmospheric perspective, is just by working with the values and eliminating the high contrast between your lights and your shadows. The other thing that happens is that the warm colors begin to disappear the farther back you go. So the first colors to disappear are the yellows and oranges and reds, right? And as you're going back, then the greens will begin to disappear, and you're pretty much left with blues and purples. In this painting, you can see the hills in the background, which are in the violets, purples, blues area. There's no greens there, there's no yellows there, nothing, all right? The only place in the background that you're going to use a yellow is in the clouds, but that is another video. Not going to go on that here. So that is the only exception, is when you're painting white in the background, they will become more yellow. So let's look again how this is set up. The colors in the foreground of this newer version of the painting, you can see, are very warm. The water in the foreground is also warmer. It's because also you're getting the rocks that are underneath the water and just kind of creating that glow. They're dulled down. They're not the same as the rocks that are on the shore, but they are there. And generally, even the desaturated light rocks are warmer. I'm using more burnt sienna, more oranges, and I'm mixing them down and graying them out, but on the warm side of the grays, not on the cool side of the grays, which you'll find back in the background area, in the midground area where these rocks are behind the boat. The colors are getting grayer. And so, as you can see, you can paint great paintings just by using this very simplified level of understanding warm and cool colors. And let's say you're painting a still life painting like this one here. Looking at the pears, right? You can look at the pear that is in light, my focal area pear, the focal pear, the pear that is the focal point. You can see that I am using warm greens, more yellows, just more orangey colors in there. It just makes the curvature of the pear more prominent and makes it look real. And as we're moving to the side of the pear, you can see how the colors are turning cooler, and then on the back side of the pear, of course, the values are darker, but it's also that the colors, the greens that I'm using, are more towards blue than they are towards yellow. And this creates the effect of a three-dimensional form. It creates the interest to the human eye looking at the painting that the pear in the light with the warmth is just coming out and saying, here I am, right? And everything else is just supporting that feeling. So you can see that even in a still life painting where you haven't got a huge background that you need to work with, that you can still create that sense of depth, even if the depth is this big, from this point to this point. It's just really small because the pears are sitting on a table with a wall behind it. You can still create that using the cooler colors for the shadows and getting that receding sense. So looking at the blue colors, some people use ultramarine blue as a warm blue because it has more red in it. And I can see the logic to that, right? But if you're looking at the color spectrum, the way it is, the way we actually see, and we put it in the line, you can see that the ultramarine blue is way on the end. It is way towards the cooler frequencies. It has a lower frequency, a smaller frequency, a more concise frequency than the red, which is long and undulating. And, they're just not connected. Even if you bring that spectrum up and connect them up here, does not, in fact, actually connect them. They're still wildly separate. And so that's where I stand on the whole blue thing. But I do understand that it is a choice, and it is something just depending on how you experience color. And we all experience color differently. my suggestion is that you take the ultramarine blue in a small little thumbnail sketch and paint it using it as a warm blue, and the cerulean blue or phthalo blue and paint it as a cool color. And then do the same little painting with ultramarine blue as the cool color and the phthalo or cerulean blue as the warm blue, and see what works best for you. Personally, because I can see it both ways, I understand it both ways, have the experience of opening yourself up to understanding the other side. So, I'm always trying to bring the lessons that are going on in painting into my own personal life. So when you want to be more balanced and you want to have a greater hold of what's going on in your life, it's always better to kind of step into the other person's shoes, right? If you're arguing about something, isn't it kind of nice to see it from their perspective and maybe get a new understanding of how you see things? I don't know. It works for me. And I think maybe we can look at this blue on the color spectrum. Is it warm or cool? Which one is warm or cool? And just kind of go to the other side and see what's going on over there. All right, you guys, with that, be inspired, be creative, be you. Have a beautiful day.